So Siobhan, welcome to the show. How's everything over in Portugal?
It is lovely. The weather's still nice. I've been here a month now and it was very hot when I got here, but finding a bit of routine, it always takes me a while to settle in somewhere, and it's just trying to avoid the holiday mode as well when I'm here. Like, it's very tempting to just have a cold wine on the beach when I should be working, but
it's always easy.
I'm not complaining. Hashtag balance.
I was going to say, I'd love to know, how are things actually over there with everything that's going on in the world?
Yeah, like, it's pretty relaxed here. They obviously, a lot of the businesses here, a lot of the people I know here, I have family here who all run businesses that are run by tourism. So they've had a very quiet, like, non-existent business for the last few months. They actually were celebrating last month when when the UK put Portugal on the green list, and my brother-in-law does airport transfers, and he had, like, the bookings came flying in within a few hours, and the businesses were all celebrating, and it got busy. But then they took it off the list again, which was a shame, because the numbers in Portugal are mainly in the north. It's all around Lisbon and the Algarve have really low cases, but the tourists are kind of trickling away now again. Now, luckily, I've been able to come over because in Ireland, we're told we're advising against unnecessary travel, and you have to quarantine when you go home. But then I was like, well, I don't plan on going back to Ireland, so I'm just going to live out here for a while.
That's why I'm like, I think when you're quite nomadic, it's quite a hard thing, especially when someone says, no, don't travel. It's like, no, I'll find a way.
Yeah. Oh, sure. I've just been traveling around Dublin while I was stuck there for a while. So it's fine here. Like, in terms, like, the businesses are open. They kind of close. You have to be out of the bars by 1 a.m. But otherwise, it's fine. You just wear a mask around. And it's at home. I saw in Ireland and the UK, lockdown's getting serious again. So I'm kind of just glad I'm not there at the moment.
I'm literally on Skyscanner every day. I'm just waiting. As soon as I'm out, I'm gone. You've lost me.
Yeah, I'm trying to. I don't know where I'm going next. Like, the weather changes here now in the next month, so I'll probably go to, I don't know, maybe Dubai, London. No, actually, London. I've kind of changed my mind on that. I don't know what I'm doing, but
I'll have a chat with you after the show. I've just found out there is a way of getting back into Bali.
I know. So I was thinking about that yesterday as well. I'm like, taking it day by day. Things could change. I keep being really sure about what I want to do next, and then change my mind. So, but anyway, I kind of just go with the flow.
Yeah, but that's what I love about you. I think on your Instagram it's summed up perfectly well, where it's living differently. But, like, I've got to be fully transparent here. There's a reason I wanted to get you on the show. Now, obviously, I spent a lot of years in the fitness industry. I noticed there was a lot of fakery, and, like, between you and the people who we know, obviously from Ireland, who we're both very similar to connected with. The thing that I love about you is you just stand out because everything about you is real. There's no bullshit, even in the way, even the way that you lead yourself. There's no manipulation in the way that you're marketing yourself. It's all just real documentation of your life and just genuinely coming from a place of love and service, which I absolutely admire. And that was one of the reasons I wanted to get you on the show. Before anything about this, though, like, with people such as yourself, I always know there's a powerful story lying behind it. And I'd love to know a little bit more about you before we kind of delve in things like how...
Well, I mean, I could go and tell my story. I'll try and summarize it. I suppose I didn't really have, there's no major story. I was actually had just a very, very typical life. Studied hard in school, did a degree in maths, had a good job. I was going to be an actuary because they were the highest paid job in Ireland. And I did a little bit of traveling, kind of questioned life a little bit, but then went into the 9 to 5. I think spent my whole life trying to battle weight, and never in a big way. Like, I was always pretty active, but I always had a really bad relationship with food. And it all kind of came to a point. Like, it wasn't that I had this calling to be a personal trainer or anything. It was more that I had to change something. I had gone into recruitment for a year and I was good at it, but I hated it. Like, I kind of, like, looking at the desk going, like, this can't be it for the next 40 years. Like, I was 25 and I was like, you can make more money, but I looked around at everyone else and I was like, are they happy? Like, I felt like I was the only one who was starting to question the norm. And yeah, I was very upset and I just didn't know what to do. And I was talking to a lady in HR, and I had no money. Like, I was trying to get her to pay for me to do a master's in software engineering, even though I was in recruitment. And she was like, well,
things.
yeah, go for it. But then she was like, what do you really want to do? And I was like, I don't know, like, just go to the gym all day. And she was like, I want to be a personal trainer. And in my head, I was like, excuse me, I went to university and studied maths. Like, why would I be a personal trainer? You know, it never would have even entered my head. Like, I was like on a career ladder, you know, there was no room to go work at a gym. But I was miserable. So I said, I actually ended up taking, it's funny how things happened. I bumped into an old boss who offered me a contract role so that I could do the personal training course on the side, and which felt like a big, you know, step back in the hope of 2 steps forward. But I was so embarrassed to be going back to an old job that I had left. But it worked out. I just decided, I was like, right, well, I'm going to have to try this now. And I did the PT course. Literally spent every penny I had to do that PT course, which wasn't that much. And I started, so I knew that I would be posting a lot more about fitness and stuff. And I knew that if I ever posted about fitness on my Instagram, I used to get a bit of slagging off my friends or, you know, that kind of thing. So I decided to set up a separate Instagram, called it OH Fitness, because my second name is O'Hagan, OH. And I said, I know, I put a post on my own page and I said, look, I know that not many people are that interested, but if you are interested, I'm going to share some fitness things over here. And it just blew up. You know, that was November 2014. By January, I think I had like 600 followers. And then by the following January, I had like 30,000. By the time I qualified as a personal trainer in the June, I had 10,000 followers, and I had been so motivated to make it actually work that I actually finally got myself in shape. And yes, then by the time I was qualified, I had so many people had watched my journey to get in shape, and they said, right, how do I do it? And all of a sudden I was straight, like, normally new personal trainers don't have like a full diary straight away. I was like, I did it. But then I'm going to keep talking. So I got to keep going. Then I suppose I was then what you would term as a successful personal trainer. You know, I was making money. I was my own boss. But I kind of had another moment of realization where I was like, I almost felt bad. I was like, I thought this was supposed to be the dream, but I still felt like there was more. And I'd always done a little bit of online coaching. But I kind of thought, like, I closed my eyes, kind of selfishly, I wrote down goals and I was like, really, all I want to do is like picture that laptop on the beach. And yeah, so then I was like, well, what does that actually mean? And so I was like, well, it means I need an online business. I had started traveling a little bit, but it meant kind of that I was leaving clients. You know, I loved training people and I still do, but it didn't work with if I was going to be going, you know, coming and going a lot. So eventually I just gave up my apartment. I had just turned 30 and I moved into a suitcase. I had done a bit of Southeast Asia, so I went back there, went to Thailand, and didn't really know what the plan was, but I'd got my business all online quite successfully. And yeah, I've just been floating around the world since, and pretty much settled in Bali before all of this. But yeah, that's a summary of my life in the last 5 years.
The thing that I love about you is we obviously help in a lot of businesses, and you actually use the business model as a bus model to create the lifestyle that you wanted. And it's pretty weird how people either end up on the soy or in Bali. They're kind of like the two places I meet everyone and find them.
Yeah.
But there's a real big thing that I want to speak about you, and I find it's quite predominant over in Ireland. Now, Joe Dispenza always says you can't see the jam jar, or you can't read the label once you're inside of the jam jar. Now, in Ireland, it's the culture's very hard. It's kind of like work hard. Do you know what I mean? And like the way that you're living is heavily frowned upon, and it's probably not that normal. Do you know what I mean? And I can imagine it was quite a struggle for you to speak about actually going, living and fulfilling this dream.
Yeah, I think that's why I wanted to travel so much. Like, I often found, you know, I'd gotten my business online. I had all this free time then, even when I was still living in Ireland, and which felt wrong. Like, I suppose I had built it all up doing the whole, you know, Gary Vee, team no sleep, and, you know, hustle, sleep when you're dead. And, you know, I'd gotten to a point where I was like, but now I'm happy. Like I'm not very money driven. I'm more about like just having enough to do what I want. And then when I had that, and it just didn't suit living in Ireland because my friends were all working full time. I was very lonely. So then I started traveling, and it's kind of like when you travel, you realize that, you know, there's people out there who are kind of living similarly, like they're doing enough to get what they want without, you know, they're not spending money on things they don't need, which, you know, I stopped doing. I mean, I still do it sometimes. I'm on Apple products, but yeah, it kind of changed my outlook in life traveling, and I do find it difficult for other people to understand, and I try and share my journey more. Like it'd be often easier to say nothing. You know, I do get a lot of criticism, but I always think, like, if I can get through to me 5 years ago who was sitting at that desk, if I can just get one person to think, okay, maybe it doesn't have to be like this, you know, I'm like, it's worth it. And I've had so many people email me. I've bumped into people in Bali who've said, you know, they've quit their job and they're here because of me, and I'm like, that's crazy, you know, like, and it makes it worth it. And I thought that kind of drives me to keep sharing, you know, to show people, to make people think differently and to keep people more aware, or different perspectives on life. And I suppose I'm kind of morbid in that I'm like, you're gonna die soon, like, get the most out of it.
I'm totally the same as that. Like, you don't know when it's coming. But the one thing that I kind of want to flip back into you, and I think it's something that keeps coming up again and again, is how, I think this might have been similar in your weight loss journey as well, is like when you were saying before, like how you were struggling and stuff like that, it's, you weren't necessarily doing things for the right reasons, but as soon as you kind of flipped it and you're like, no, this is important to me, I actually want to live in a place of service and do X, Y, Z, suddenly the resistance and everything just became quite effortless and it just happened.
Yeah. And I think I always say that, especially with trying to lose weight, it's like when you have meaning behind it, or like when it's not just, I want to be a certain size. For me, like the reason I finally made a change was that for me, wanting to lose weight was actually, I want to be my own advertisement, because I want to make a success of my business, because I'm not taking a big risk and I don't know what I'm doing in my life. So that kind of made me get up at 5 a.m. every day to train. And, you know, I was studying in the evenings, I was meal prepping every meal, because I realized that my Instagram was growing. And like, I think a lot of people have, you know, strategies and they get help, and I didn't really. I've always just gone, I think I've been interested in psychology, so I've always kind of known what people want to see, but not been very manipulative about it. And I think trusting people that they know when they're being manipulated or when they're being sold to, and just being really honest with people. And I think it's a business. Like, I'm not very money driven, but I'm like, just building people's trust has always been a big thing for me. And then when I do sell anything, it's easy. Like, people buy off people they trust.
100%. I always say in business, you've got there's two ways of leading it. It's either manipulation or inspiration. But with you, it's it's real, it's authentic. So people lead through you because you inspire them. You're not manipulating them in fear to get the sell, so to speak. You're pulling them to you. Yeah, it's very obvious.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I know. I mean, because I think the opposite is always obvious. I do have my business partner. He's a guy I went to college with, and he's the opposite. He's really like, you know, we could do this and do this, and I'm like, no, wouldn't sit well with me. And I'm like, I know, yeah, we could just sell. I could have sold like an abs blast workout book, you know, easily, you know. But I just was like, that's not going to help people the way I want to help people. You know, even my online coaching, like people say like, oh, you could charge so much more, but I was like, but then I wouldn't be helping as many people. And that sounds very like playing the martyr. But I mean, you know, I've got it working in a way that it's a low cost group training with individual feedback, and it just is I've been working on it for years, and it's kind of like I finally found that way that it works without selling to people, without having to do a hard sell, and people are getting the results they want, and it's finally, after years of changing it just works now.
I totally appreciate that. I think one of the biggest things I see in business is like people, when they're on their own and they just follow their intuition and their excitement and what they love, they just naturally create something that people are drawn and magnetized to. But as soon as you start letting people's voices in and they start to change your mind and stuff like that, then suddenly they have this like plateau point where they're trying to take it to the next level. Because they start getting directed. I think that's the beautiful thing about you, is just how you you're so grounded in who you are, what you want, how you want to service people, that you're quite unshakable. Even if there is a much bigger gold shiny object over there, you're not moving
Yeah.
because it's this. And I really think in the realm of entrepreneurship, that's something that really cripples a lot of people, is shiny object syndrome.
Yeah, probably the problem I've had recently is that there was no new goal. Like I was, like my business is working well, and I find it very difficult to do something new when my values are freedom and happiness. So when I'm like, as soon as I've got that, I find it very difficult to like, okay, let's sit down and work on a new project, when I'm like, I don't really need to. But then I might find something that I'm like even just I'm building a new app for the program, and I'm like, oh yeah, this will mean that we can help loads more people. It'll make my check-ins easier. And I'm like, so that kind of motivates me to sit down, make it part of my routine in the morning, and just do it. And like once something's part of my morning routine, I'll do it. But like after that, I don't. I just
we had an incredible guy on the show. His show actually went live today. He was the best-selling author of that book, Ready, Steady, Growth Hack. And he was on about like in the world, a lot of people are always trying to look to grow and grow and grow instead of just focus on the thing that's under the nose. If they've got something that's doing well, instead of aiming for growth, how do they optimize it so that they can get more and just create a bigger impact from the thing that's clearly
working?
You
get that from trainers. Like people message me all the time, like, how do you grow your following? Or, I want to be like me. To be honest, I never really have any answers because I never really had a strategy. It was just like, just be yourself.
Just be you.
But I'm always like, but don't disregard the people that you've got. Like, you don't need a lot of people to make a successful online coaching business. Like you just need people who will trust you and pay you, and nurture that, or like focus on offering something better. Don't just become a new person trainer and want to grow your following to whatever number of people.
I totally admire that. I think a lot of people are always aiming. That's what they do. Their eyes are gaze. It's like, I want to be like you. I want to be more like you. And it's like, no, just be the best version of you, and that will work.
Yeah. Yeah. And people always ask me, like, who do you like? I don't see any. I probably should get better at this, but like, I don't see any competition, or like, I really believe there's room for everyone. I've never.
Do you see yourself as competition? Is like, are you just trying to be better and better and better, and that's the actual competition, not anyone else?
Yeah, like I'm all about like self-improvement. So whatever that could look like anything to me. Like I just like learning. I love to learn. So like I just love to read. I love to listen to podcasts, Audible, like just always learning. Like I find it very difficult to sit down and watch a television program or even read a novel. Now I've done it a bit more recently because I've been bored. But I like to be better than myself, which I struggled with a lot because I used to always put my self-worth in my physical body because I had done a bikini competition. Like it was always like, I'm never going to be as, like I was always like, oh, I don't look as good as I did then. Or I used to worry that, it was really obvious. I used to get a lot more interaction on my page when I had, the leaner I was. And yet I was really happy outside my life. But then I was quite rational about it. I was like, oh, I want more interaction. I'm going to have to get leaner. And I was like, but then I'm able to break it down and say, okay, well, why do you want more interaction? The sad thing is, like, people, no matter how much knowledge I have, like, people will buy off me more the leaner I am, because it's like, oh, I want to do that. But I'm very aware if I start thinking anything, I'm able to stop with my thoughts and question.
I didn't think I'd jump into this with you today, but I was on about you. There's something that I see, and I saw it quite prevalent, obviously, when we had the coaching business, is that people are drawn towards extremes. Instead of just becoming great at something, they're just trying to throw things to an extreme and create so much stress and pressure in areas that's needed.
And that's traveling around Thailand helped me realize that, like, looking at Buddhism, and I'm like, oh yeah, and just don't go to extremes. Too much of anything is bad. And I think I've found that really good balance at the moment. Like, I love training. I'm even starting to enjoy running. I do yoga now every day.
You crushed, like, I was like, oh God, that's a really good time.
I ran 5K this morning in sub 25, and it was ugly and awful, but I did it. And I was like, but I didn't even set out to do it. I just I set myself weekly targets at my running, and that's some running I just didn't do before lockdown. But what was I going to say? Learning yoga. What are we talking about? Running. I like to constantly improve. extremes. Oh yeah, so like I do all that, but then I also love eating and drinking. Like I just don't think I'll ever be that person who like chooses kale over chips. So I think that's what people like seeing, because I got McDonald's the other day and someone was like, "Oh, you're gonna." My neighbor saw me getting it off Uber Eats, and he was like, "Oh, you're gonna show that on your Instagram?" And I was like, "Yeah." Like I think people are like, you're either fitness, and if you're fitness, you're labeled fitness, and it's like, this is the way you live your life. You can't be drunk on a Sunday night. But I often am. So yeah, like I find my balance and everything. Like there'll be times I go the other end, and I might, like, even this week I was out 3 nights in a row, and like I know my homeostasis point. Like I know that if I do that, I feel like, ugh, I just want vegetables and I want to move and I want to do yoga. And yeah, so I have a really good balance, and I just try and get other people into that. Like a lot of women that come to me are just so uptight with their diet. I'm like, they'll be like, "Oh, I can't eat that much," and I'm like, "You actually can. It's because you're dieting too hard that you end up eating too much." And it's kind of just making everyone relax. Like I just want to remove people's stress out of their lives. And at the moment, I focus on people's training and nutrition and just reducing stress around that.
Well, it's incredible the amount of people you're helping. I mean, one of the big things that I'd love to speak to, I think, obviously with all that we do and with the psychology and everything, I found that people usually have two ways of kind of like going inwards. Number one, they can actually sit there, get still and think. And not a lot of people can do that. I think that's quite a hard thing for people to go straight into. And then the other way is actually going in through body. So a lot of people reverse engineer. Usually the body's the last place where they gain weight, they're not feeling good. But a lot of people start there, they fix that. So I always think that the physical body is the result of the subconscious mind. And I think that I think a lot of people reverse engineer the body to get confidence, to believe in themselves more, to go and do X, Y, Z in the world. And I think that's another gateway to connect inwards, which is kind of why I wanted to speak to you. Now, with that being said, people really struggle here. Like there's so much information. People are very reluctant to actually do what works for them and more be inclined to do what's working for Joan and Tina. So I'd love to speak to you here, because obviously you're living proof, and for some amazing intuitive reason, maybe it was the Guinness, you naturally did this yourself and you worked it out yourself. But for a lot of people out there, they're really struggling, and unfortunately they've attached confidence, self-belief, love, XYZ onto the body, and it's creating this just negative self-sabotaging loop, which can lead to depression and just
I've been through the whole. I think that's why it's like now I've got such good balance, because I've done all the extremes. I've had, I've placed worth in my abs, and I think I struggled a lot, definitely after the competition, like really struggled. But I think by putting into practice, like I'm so lucky now to have that balance, and all I want to do is help other people. But I think everyone wants results now, or yesterday, or and the thing is, like, it's so simple. Like it is, I hate breaking it down, but it's like it's calories in, calories out. But it's all about adherence. It's about doing that for a long time. And the problem is people go too hard with anything. They decide they want to run, and they try and run 5K in under 30 minutes. They're like, I hate it. And I'm like, no, let's look at making it a bit easier. And same with people's nutrition. I'm like, let's actually increase. They come to me and say, I eat 1,200 calories and I'm not losing weight. I'm like, and you have to be very good at coaching to be like, no, you actually don't. You actually are eating a lot more. But let's increase your calories to 2,000, and then you'll find that you're not secretly eating on a Saturday night, or not so secretly. The whole thing with everything in life is consistency over perfection. And my clients are sick of hearing me say that, because I just think
that consistency over perfection.
Perfection. When it comes to dieting, people are aiming for perfect diets, and they're worried about the macro split, and then they're getting their pizza and chips on Saturday night. And I'm like, okay, maybe you didn't need the pizza. Maybe you didn't want the pizza and chips if you hadn't starved yourself Monday to Friday. So, and looking at your nutrition over the course of a year rather than just this week and wondering why you don't get results. It's a long process to get someone to think like that. And I think a big problem we have is diet culture. And I was a bit lost probably last year when I read a lot about diet culture, and I I was like, whoa, I had a lot of self-reflection. I was like, whoa, I've been probably a big part of this diet culture, like sharing all my before and after pictures and, you know, talking about calories and everything. And even I was like, my coaching is all about calories and macros. And I was like, should I just stop what I'm doing? And I was talking, I have a couple of girls that help me coach, and I was talking to one of them, and she's very she's very well versed in like feminism and any kind of diet culture. So I spoke to her and was like, am I a big part of the problem? And I was like, are you? I was like, but if you're helping me, you obviously agree with it. And she was like, no, Siobhan, what you're doing, she's like, yes, if we could get rid of diet culture altogether, that would be ideal. Well, but I've realized what I do is not offer people big body transformations. Like what I'm doing is help untangle them from diet culture and bring more awareness around their training and nutrition and their mindset with it. Untangle it and help them.
From me looking in, and I think this is a big thing, I don't know if you're aware of this, and hopefully what I'm about to say provides a bit of a mirror back to you. I think the way you do it is, what I've seen is from that industry is a lot of people hate themselves to results. So it's a hate-driven goal, whereas what you're doing, it's more of a case of loving yourself, taking away the stress. Do you know what I mean? Doing it in a manner that's going to be long-lived. And I think
you don't have end goals. The big problem you have, like you'll never meet someone as determined as a bride.
I love that.
But the problem is after the wedding, they've lost that motivation. You know, they don't. You know, and the problem is with people in their run up to the weddings, you know, they don't get to enjoy the process because they're so obsessed with being as lean as possible on the day, and to a point where you get a lot of brides, I think, that look ill on the day because they've literally dieted down to, you know, they've got the treadmills in the house for the run up to the wedding, and you know, I get a lot of people who are worried about their hen party, or they're, you know, like they don't get to enjoy the process, or that, you know, they're like, oh, we've got our meal, our tasting in the hotel, you know, we've got the meal tasting, what will we do? And I'm like, enjoy it, go enjoy it. You know, that meal isn't going to make a difference in the long run. And that's why I don't like people having end goals or having a weight. You know, it's like life is going to, what I like to teach is like how to handle life either way. Like there'll be weeks where you actually just don't care at all and you just want to eat all around you, and that's fine. Or, you know, you've got the tools to like make anything. You know, I always say, like, you can have a social life and still be in a calorie deficit, but at the same time, if you want to go out and, you know, if you want to go on holidays for a week, you've got the tools. It doesn't matter. You know, that's like you saying to people, and sometimes it might come across a really mixed message where I'm like, oh, calorie deficit, but at the same time, life's short. So I always say, like, I diet when I can. I try not to let it get in the way of my life. And luckily then most of the time I end up in a deficit because, you know, I might go out on a Saturday or Sunday, but I love training. I love eating, you know, I'm good most of the time. I have the right balance. But people will just see me drinking on a Saturday and be like, how do I do that? You know, they don't look at the long game. Like, I've been basically doing this for like 6 months and all of a sudden I look a bit leaner and everyone's like, is it the yoga? Is it the running? What's the secret? I'm like, consistency.
I think so. Yeah, I think consistency is the key word, but I think a lot of people confuse intensity with consistency. So I think they go intense for 7, 12 days, everything in, and it becomes, you can't be consistent and intense. It will fuck you.
Yeah. And that's why I say, like, consistency doesn't mean not being perfect. You know, like, you know, it's not, again, not perfection. It's like, yeah, so what if you like eat too much, or so what if you don't train today? It doesn't matter. Just, it's what you do the next day, you know. And it's not, because it's not aiming for a perfect week. Like, you aim for a perfect week and you mess up on a Tuesday and then you just throw it all out the window. Yeah. That's when it's a problem. So that's why I'm like, consistency over perfection. And consistency does not mean perfection. It's just like how you handle yourself when you fall. It's like all those cliches.
No, I totally agree. I mean, one of the things I love to touch up with you about is through my own experience in that, I actually used to physiques and magazine modeling ages ago.
Yeah, we
I was never
all have gone to
fulfilled.
that point.
I look at the photos, I'm like, who on earth is this guy? He just looks so
Me in the
depressed.
gym in the dark, with the dark lighting and loads of makeup on and ripped, like for one photo shoot.
Exactly. There's actually a really funny story on my end. I've got a photo from like my final shoot, which was a front cover thing. And literally, as soon as he took the shot, I threw everything down, looked in the mirror. I was like, who the fuck is this? And just, I let go of it. I was like, I'm done. I'm out. I've climbed the wrong mountain. I'm really not fulfilled. But the whole point why I'm going into that conversation is we're on about why are struggling. So people connect through the body. That's a very common way. Do you know what I mean? A lot of people struggle. And when I think back to my own story and with where I am today, my goals weren't for me. And what you were saying then with the bride, the goals, are the goals really for, yes, she wants to look good for her photos, but really is it to appease everyone else so that
I know. There's a great book, Lost Connections. Have you ever read it?
I've never read that. I've never even heard of it.
Oh, get it.
Sounds well up my street.
Recommend, but now when I do recommend it to people, like everyone is like, I can't believe I didn't read this. It is such a good book. I think I've read it 3 or 4 times.
What's
Disconnection. So like, it's actually the subtitle is why you're depressed or why you're anxious and depressed or something like that, which I think throws people off reading it. Like I was not suffering with depression. I just read it, and I think the subtitle nearly puts people off, but it kind of looks at different factors that can lead to depression and anxiety. But like, you're looking at disconnection in your work, disconnection in society. Like if you don't have any social connections, like how important they are. And there's like 9 different things, but yeah, like not having meaning in what you do. But I find, obviously you're just talking about dieting there, but even, you'll have someone saving for a mortgage and they're miserable, but they're like on the way to get the dream house and they just something doesn't feel right in them and it's like when I was sitting at my desk and I was like, something's not right. And I think you need to learn to go with that feeling and, and it's like, as I being still, like being able to be still and know your own thoughts. And actually, like, so many people are not able to sit with their own thoughts. And like, that's a warning sign that you need to do it even more. And think like, why am I doing this for me? Am I doing it for someone else? Like when it comes to careers and living the normal life, I think nobody actually, there might be some careers that, people are very fulfilled and they enjoy it, but I just think there's so many people who are doing it for other reasons, like not personal reasons, like they're doing it because it's the norm or what they think is the norm or societal norms. And I'm all about going against that.
It shows. Do you think, well, I always think that maybe people have confused attachment with connection. So it's like, I've got to be lean to get this, to get other people's approval. They're attached, and anything that's an attachment basis. If you attach love to another person, even though it is, you still not get it from yourself.
That's what Stoicism taught me that. Like, and it's funny because I always say that about Bali. Like I was, I'd always be saying like, don't get too attached to anything. Don't get too attached to anything. And when I went back to Bali in February, I was actually like, okay, life is perfect. I actually like, this is. I wrote it in my journal one day. I was like, when am I going to wake up from this dream? I just had a really good routine, training, friends, food, happiness, heat, like everything was just perfect. And then all of a sudden, obviously, it was just taken away. It wasn't even taken away. Like I made the decision to leave, but I was like, that was a life lesson. Like, don't be too attached to anything. And that's the way I always live. I'm never attached. Some people call it a problem, like a commitment issues, but I'm like, I don't get attached to anything. Like I could lose. I nearly left the laptop in the airport in security, and I didn't even go running back. I was like, if it's gone, it's gone. Like that's the universe. Like sometimes I get a bit like that. I'm also very practical, but I just am not attached to anything. And luckily, I mean, I suppose that probably is because of money. That if what's the worst that can happen? Okay, I'll deal with it. Like, it's fine. I'm very stoic like that.
Well, look, it's clearly working, and obviously people are aspiring to kind of learn your ways. I'd love to kind of speak to you about this. Like, really, if we can put something practical down for our audience. Now, a lot of our audience are females, lots of guys as well, people who are quite aware, conscious, driven, people who are moving things forwards and pushing the ball forwards in every area of life, quite a conscious crowd. But I do find that health and physical things do become a bit of an issue. And sometimes I always use the analogy, if you're not pushing the balls forward in every area of life, there's always something that will snap you. So if you don't feel confident in your body and you suddenly have to go and do a speaking gig or work or leave your job, it's going to get you in some way, shape or form, or even in expressing yourself to your girlfriend or something, or boyfriend or something along the lines of that. Now, I'd love to know from you, because intuitively you have navigated your way through this process very well, obviously felt the pains and navigated, been aware and adapted. For people who are kind of really struggling, what would you say would be a great place to start?
Struggling with anything? I always think, it's like all about slowing down, taking a step back, journaling. I'm like, just write everything down and ask yourself why, or so what. Like, that's kind of a process I use. I'm like, so what? Like, they're like, what if I lose my job, or what if I don't make enough money? I'm like, so what? What? Sell your car? So what? It's questioning everything. And I think to question everything, you have to slow down. There's so many people who are just like go, 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 or just like living in a loop. And also it's like so cliche, don't be afraid to fail. Like, don't be like when it comes to health and fitness, like, people are trying to be perfect. I'm like, okay, it doesn't matter if you gain a few pounds. Like, it actually doesn't matter. And if it gets to a point where it's affecting your confidence, okay, well then let's just tie things back a little bit. Or, like, oh yeah, I just not extreme with anything. So it's like, yeah, you can have a few drinks, but if you find that you're like not working the next day, or, if you find it's affecting you, pull it back. If you're, if you've got enough money to do what you want, great. But then if you start running out of it, like, okay, let's make a little bit more money. And I think it's just being adaptable as well. I think that's the most people who did the best out of all this pandemic and lockdown are people who've been really adaptable. People who've owned bars have shut down and they pivoted into, doing delivery for supermarkets, and I think I'd go down another tangent there, but, people being tied to labels is a big thing. They think, oh, I'm a fitness person, I'm not allowed to this, or, I'm career driven. How could I just sell my house?
Stop trying to fit into a camp.
Yeah. And I think there's another book. Have you read A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle?
Oh yeah.
So that just made me think about labels and what I was expecting of myself because of the label I'd put on myself. I changed I used to be ohfitness.ie on Instagram, and I changed it because I was like, I hate being that you're a fitness person, or you have, like, I felt like I was a failing fitness person because I didn't have abs anymore. And I was like, what if I just want to be me? So I changed my name.
Totally know that feeling.
So yeah, so if you're that's the question. Like, if you're struggling, it's like, well, slow down and think. Like, there's always, I think, something that can be done. Like, I always say to people, even if they're like working, but have this long-term dream of becoming a guitar teacher, even if they don't play the guitar, it's like, just like, there's something on YouTube that will teach you how to do something. There's Skillshare, there's a book that you could learn, even if you don't even have time to do that yet. Maybe there's a book that you could read 2 pages of every day, and like, just do something to feel like you're moving forward. Even if it is
with regards to this whole topic that we're on about, I think the biggest thing that I'm getting from this entire conversation and you is find what works for you and just do you, in short.
Yeah.
Now, you're on about Eckhart Tolle before. If I don't know if you've watched it, but over on YouTube, he's done, I think it's about an hour and a half of an interview with Russell Brand. And literally,
no, I listened to this. I saw it on the podcast. I was like, oh here we go. God. And then it was only a sample. Good. You have to pay for it, so I must go. I love Russell Brand. I've actually just finished his book.
The full video's on YouTube. I think it's about 90 minutes, but literally it's the quietest I've ever, like, Russell Brand literally introduces him, says a question about ego, identity, and why do we do what we do. And he just goes off for about 90 minutes. But the content in it is I'd strongly recommend watching that.
Yeah, I've consumed a lot of his content. It's really, and that's probably very helpful. Like, when I first read The Power of Now, I was going around Thailand. And I was like, oh yeah, presence. Like I'd never come across the idea of like being present or conscious and yeah, I kind of came back a bit almost too woo woo. You know, you come on from Bali like a changed person. I'm very practical though in what I do. Like I'm not one, you know, I'm not off the other end. I think it's my background in like maths and physics. I'm not too crazy.
I had a meeting. We had like we were about to launch a new brand, and I had like a meeting with some like quite high up people with who we've partnered with. I remember being sat there in Starbucks, literally, I'd probably about 2 weeks after I was allowed back out of the house, and I was sat there in like suede boots, the works, and I was sat cross-legged.
Oh yeah,
I was like, oh god,
peak Bali.
Yeah,
I know. Like, yeah, no. So I mean, reading for me, I always think there's something you can do. There's always something you can do to improve yourself, and it's like I always say, like you're either being your higher self or your lower self, and I was my lower self for the last few days, and then today I come out and I'm like, smashed my yoga, did a really fast run. I've got all my work done, you know, sold some places, do a podcast. I'm just going to go for a nice lunch, and I'm like, that's my higher self.
Do you know what? I think it's awesome that you've differentiated that. I'd love to speak to you because one of the biggest things I found with like really successful entertainers, but quite a lot of successful people who do that, some people have it as a different persona or X, Y, Z. It's like,
yeah.
So I'd love to know from you, like what would you say is the difference, just so we can get this and make it clear for our audience? What would you say the difference is between your higher and your lower self? Is it a different person? How do you see it?
I have a morning routine, and my morning routine is like, no matter where I am, that's what works. So it's like, you know, get up, I read a couple of books, have my coffee, journal, meditate, learn some language. I'm now up to like 40 minutes of yoga. I either go for a run or go to the gym. I write a daily email to my email list. Then I'll do my emails. Then I'll do my WhatsApp messages. And like that, you know, that's like non-negotiable. But and then I'll eat really well. You know, like I don't get hungry in the morning, so like I'll push out breakfast. You know, I'll stick to my calorie deficit for the day. But it would just take me, say, going out, like what happens here a lot because I'm in Portugal, people are on holidays. You know, it's like, oh, go for dinner, and I'm like, okay, I'll go, but I won't drink. But then the wine will come out, and I'll be like, life is too short to say no to good wine on a Tuesday. You know, I could die tomorrow, and you know, so I might stay a bit later. And then, even if I don't eat that much, you know, then if I wake up later and I don't do the morning routine, it's gone out. And then I am my lower self for that day most of the time. Like I find it hard to pull it back and do any work if I don't start my morning right. So I suppose my life is just like a day of, I try and be my higher self as much as possible, but I don't get angry if my lower self comes out. It's like, yeah, happens.
That's what I was going to say. It's accepting it. It's like, do you know what? It's okay to not feel okay for a day and just like, do you know what? I'm just going to
I don't get guilty at all anymore. Like sometimes I'm almost guilty that I don't, because someone might write to me and they're like, hey Siobhan, just wondering how you don't feel guilty after, you know, a weekend of eating and drinking. Or I'm like, should I? I'm like, I just don't. And then because I don't put guilt on myself, it means that I don't then do anything too drastic the other, and you know, I just keep going.
Where do you feel we learn that behavior? Like where do we learn guilt? Like where does guilt?
I don't know. I think it's with social media, you do, like everyone's sharing. I think everyone, especially with fitness people, they're sharing all their, you know, good meals, blah blah, and then they go. It's not like these people are living perfect lives. They're just not always showing, you know, the days where they're actually like yesterday I was in the gym and I showed it. I was about to start like an 8-minute AMRAP. I did one round and I was like, actually, nah. Not going, leaving, and
I'm out.
I just don't think, I never see people actually go, I went to the gym and just left in the middle of it because I just didn't feel, and like that does happen. And I think by sharing that, but I think the problem, I think that's why people might think it doesn't happen, because people are sharing perfect lives, or you know, they're not showing that they got McDonald's last night when they were hungry, or so yeah, I think I'm saying it working, you know, but people are like sharing businesses, and even when it comes to like say MLMs, and people are like, oh my god, I'm living the dream. I'm like, yeah, but you didn't show all the credit cards that you racked up, because just the Instagram, you know, you're trying to show that perfect life. And I've learned over the years to show it all. It's actually easier for me. Like I've nothing to hide. You know, like I hate using filters and everything, because like there's people I meet in the street and I'm like, I wouldn't recognize you, because you know all they use are filters. I find it's easier for me just to be myself online. That way, you know, like people either like me or they don't. It's
I think
even
there's so
like,
much power in that, though. It's like just be
yeah,
who you are and let the right people fall in love with you instead of
yeah,
trying to
it
be.
really works. I lose a lot of followers and stuff, but I also gain a lot more. And I think people will come to me. They might come thinking, "Oh, this is a fitness page where I'm going to learn how to. I'm going to get like a 5-minute ab workout every day," or you know. And I'm like, "No, I'm actually selling a program which you can buy. I'll share some tips if I think it'll be helpful to the general public." And it's mostly just me sharing my life, and it's become a bit of an entertainment thing. Like people just enjoy watching. Like I get like 50,000 people watching me every day, and I kind of forget. Like I post stuff on my
It's a
story
football
without
stadium.
even. There's no strategy. There's no plan. It's yeah, I know. I'm like, whoa. I remember when I first had 40,000 followers. I remember being in a stadium, and they said the attendance was 40,000, and I remember freaking out when that's how many people follow me on Instagram, and now it's like I don't know, triple that.
It's
But yeah, no,
flying.
so it's mad. So you do, and it's been a learning curve with like getting criticism online. Like I share my life, a lot of it, so people feel like they know me. People feel like they want to tell me what to do, and I'm very good
This
at handling it
is
now.
a topic. I'm so glad you've just made that segue. This is something I really wanted to kind of lead this conversation. Now, for me, I think you're incredible for being who you are and actually standing so proudly and putting literally bearing all and exposing who you are online. But at the same time, in doing that, trolls and criticisms and
Yeah,
judgments tend to come forwards.
yeah. I
Yeah.
am very. It's been. See, I think again, I've been at this years. Like I've been 2014. I set up the account and it grew, and I think I've grown with it. Like I'd often see. Like so, I've kind of learned how to handle things. Whereas I might see someone who like comes out of Love Island and has a million followers, and they don't know how to handle abuse or this online persona. Um, I am. Working on my mindset all these years has really helped. You know, I can take anything now. I'm in a really, really good place. Like if someone writes to me and tells me they don't like me or criticize me, it's normally fine. And like I have friends who get the same abuse, and I'm able to look at it and go, okay, if this person actually, like, I'm open to constructive criticism, of course, but if someone comes on to tell me that they don't like that I said this, or they got offended, like this is a perfect example. I went for a run a couple weeks ago, and I was like, oh, I went out really slow today, and like someone wrote to me and was like, hi Siobhan, I'm actually quite offended because that's my fastest time, and I just don't think you're considering people's feelings. And I was like, okay, and I'm like, okay, but I always reply, like I'm very good at confrontation, at any kind of conflict. I'm always like, oh God, I never even thought of that, thanks for letting me know, like, and I not in a patronizing way, or I've always like try and make them see it from my point of view as well. Like that's with any kind of conflict or conversation, it's all about having perspective and awareness. And so when someone comes at me, like I know there's a forum like threads just about how much people hate me. And it's funny because I think you can find something to give out about in anything anyone does. And there are people so it
I
is
think I've
hard
got one of
sometimes, like,
those.
oh really? I do find that I am a little bit more careful in my words. Like when I write captions now, I have to be like, okay, I have to write it in a way that don't offend anyone, even though sometimes I do want to say, like, you don't need to have a mortgage and a kids, and like you can actually just live your life. Or for some people I'm like, okay, maybe it is too late to go to Bali and live the dream, but I'm like, I just want to, it's worth saying it sometimes to get through to the right people. Yeah, I have some weird trolls, like someone who's literally been stalking me for years. So I've blocked the account like 60, 70 times probably, and they just set up new accounts, and they just write to me, and they're like, and they say the same thing all the time, so I know it's them. And I'm like, I'd love to sit down with them and be like, what are you trying to achieve here? Do you want me to just quit Instagram because It's not going to happen. Like, just don't, like, there's so many people that I follow that they're a nice person or whatever, but their content might be annoying me for whatever reason. It could be a case that I'm just jealous, which obviously happens a lot when people watch my content. So like, I try and make it more inspirational, like, oh, you too could, live like this if you make the right decisions, or you don't care what people think, or you go against societal norms. And kind of remind people that, like, if you're getting angry here, it could be just a case of a little bit of jealousy. And hopefully, like, and maybe they could sit with that feeling and go, maybe I am jealous. Maybe I do want to quit my job. Maybe I do want to, so maybe it could work out well. But I mean, I'm perfectly fine getting criticism, but I just know that there's so many people who are not in a good place. And I've had friends online, like 100,000 followers, and they'll get comments, and they'll be stressed out and upset, and it's just, I think it's a terrible thing we've got going.
I think
in terms of these forums, Facebook groups, and
I totally agree with you. I think the big thing is to actually flip the psychology. Like, if you put yourself, if someone's wasting their time watching someone else's life and hurt people, period.
Yeah. And it's hard to get, and I mean, I'm really aware of that, and it's hard to get, it's the person who needs to know that is the person who's actually spreading the hate, but it's just closed-mindedness. And like, I dream of a world where everyone like reads a lot and is really present and aware of everything. But the sad thing is, like, I see it in my friends, I see it in my family. They might say something, and they'd give out about the girl that's just serving coffee, and I'm like, maybe she didn't hear you, or like, they make, some people meet people, or some people presume the worst in people, where I think if we could just live in a world where everyone actually sees people as humans, that who there is room for error, there will be mistakes, but maybe they're not terrible people. Like, people are very much a product of their environment and their upbringing, and no one is born inherently bad. Like, if you try and look for the good in someone, you can find it. Like, and then if you're able to connect with someone on that level, even if, like, I've had people write horrible things to me, and if I'm able to reply to them in a rational way and get them to maybe see, say my point of view again in a different way. I've had people apologize to me. I've had people who write to me and say, like, I've said something horrible to you before. I was, they could be like, I had a woman write to me, and this is years ago, and I took a screenshot and put it on my story. It was something awful. I can't remember what it was. And she wrote to me a few months later. She was like, I was having such a terrible day in the office. Like, something happened, blah, blah. And I watched your story and I reacted, and I shouldn't have done that. And I'm sorry. And actually, I was a learning curve for me. I was like, God, I shouldn't have put that on my story. Like, that was bad form. But it's, it's about slowing down and like realizing people make mistakes and talking to them in a rational way, and not letting the ego get in the way.
The reason that I wanted to ask you that question was because there's a lot of people who want to put themselves out online or build a business, or, do you know what I mean? Like, actually start helping people. And I really feel like when it comes down to trolling and criticism, it takes one thing to kill someone's dream, in my eyes. And sometimes, not sometimes, a lot of the time, that fear coming true is usually the thing that stops it.
Yeah. Now, luckily, I've had so much more positivity than negativity. Like, I get enough emails from people every day just saying crazy stuff, like people I haven't even coached, and they'll be like, you changed my life. I'm like, how? Like, I don't even know you. And like, that makes it worth it. Like, people choose to be offended. So like, if I send an email out, and I like to get passionate about it, I'm very, I like to be, that's why I like using the emails, because there's less people just going to wander onto your page and get offended. And, I can kind of speak a bit more, and you have people's attention. You can put more context behind what you're trying to say. But yet still people will be like, well, actually, I don't want to do that. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. I'm like, oh, that's fine. You can do that. This is what I'm going to do. I just dream of a world where everyone will just slow down and think about it a bit more. And I don't know, like, I also then always acknowledge my privilege, like that I'm in a very privileged position. I don't have any kids, risk, mortgages, debt. And I put that all down to, like, it's from building an Instagram following, which was a bit of luck and timing and hard work. But you know, my life could be completely different, and it is very, sometimes like I might probably sound patronizing, being like, go live your dreams, when it's like, yeah, it's easy for you, but at the same time, everything I've done is a lot of conscious decisions. Sorry, I'll let you talk now.
No. There's so many tangents I can jump in, but it really is. It's choice of decisions and choice of actions. Like that's what I'm trying to say is, when we were on about then about how sometimes people get offended, I think half the time is actually like, what are the level of the people who you're talking to now? I was in a conversation the other day and someone was giving me relationship, like not really, other way around. Someone was asking me about the relationship and I was like, I want to keep growing XYZ, but I feel like my girlfriend doesn't want to grow. She's very still and stagnant. And I don't want, what's the conversation? Like, how do you have that? And I was just like, this is really crazy, because if she's not open-minded or open to growth, whatever you say is going to be an attack and it's going to offend. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the hardest things, especially from someone who's putting themselves out to the level that you are on social media, you're speaking to people at a multitude of different levels. You don't know what's going on in their life. And do you know what I mean? I think it's...
Yeah, and you can't put the context behind. Like, they could look at my story one day and I'm talking about, you know, being your best self or something, you know, and then the next day they could see me drinking and they'd be like, oh, that's contradiction, or, you know, she's hypocrite, and unfollow, you know. And it's just, I feel like back in the day you used to have people who watch a story and they never missed it, but obviously there's just so much out there now. There's a lot of people to watch.
Reels, story, yeah, Instagram, TV.
I hardly watch anyone else, but you know, so it's really hard to put that context.
I'm offended.
I'll put on notifications. No, I'm terrible. I'll be meeting someone, then I'm like, oh, better go watch a story, and I'm like, oh my god, I didn't have much anything, because I'm like, well, that's time I could be reading, or time I could be, and I think that's why I don't really get tied up in what anyone else is doing, or else I find myself getting annoyed or jealous, or I don't know. I actually annoys me that my friends, my closest friends, don't post that much, so I never see their stories, because it's so far down in my list of people.
There's such a common thread in your story, what you do, how you teach, and how you help people. Yeah, there really is. And yours is like, you've become so laser focused on like your pursuit of happiness is doing the things that are right for you, doing the things that are in line with your values. Yeah. And your blink of it, you're honed in on that. Like, you're not looking at what everyone else is doing. And I think maybe that's what I'm attracted to when I see you online. I'm like, this girl is so real, authentic. Like, every single thing it just shines who you are. Does that make sense?
But I think I put that down to being very, very clear on my values and making decisions around that. Like, I could be pulled in lots of directions. I could be trying out different things, especially with business. Like, there's so many things I could be doing, but I'm like, no, hold on. Values, happiness, and freedom. Let's go. Health. Now I'm like health, happiness, and freedom. And that makes it very easy to decide whether to work on a new project tonight or go for dinner with my friends, or, you know, yeah, like, especially when it came to like trying to get myself out of a bad nutrition or a bad relationship with food after my competition, I have to be like, okay, value driven. How do I know whether to go for dinner with my friends? It's like, yeah, I want to be lean and fit and healthy, but I'm like, no, but your number one thing is freedom and happiness. Like, go for dinner.
It's like relearning yourself, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's like there's no guilt then, you know, you're making decisions. Or like, if I say no to a project, or if I say no to my business partner about doing some work, like, he knows now. It's like, no, if it means I have to do more work, or, you know, it's just really easy. I don't feel guilty when I don't work, because I'm like, no, you're doing what you need to do.
But the thing is, though, if it's the right thing and it speaks to you, you then know to act on it, you know? Yeah, that's how in tune you are. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I am pretty in tune. And like, it just comes to me, things come to me now. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to do that. Ideas. And it's from meditating and being still and not spending every minute of the day trying to work. You know, it's when you slow down that you get these motivations.
Look, I'd love to drive home a point in the show. And I think from everyone who's been an avid listener of this show, we've had some hugely successful, influential celebrities, XYZ, on the show. And the people who have done something have some method of getting still. They have some method, habit, routine, decisive choice driven conscious action that allows them to go in, build the communicate with themselves, and then navigate the life course from that. And if there's one biggest correlation in this entire show's history, it's that. And 80% is your key habit, my key habit, journaling. Sit there, get clear.
Yeah, that's because journaling is just, it made me question. Yeah, it's journaling and questioning your thoughts and looking at things from different people's perspectives, especially when dealing with other people. It's like, let's see what their aim is in this conversation. And it just takes a lot of stress out of your life then. Yeah. Like, just don't get angry at people.
With this conversation, I want to kind of flip back to that thread. A lot of people are scared to be who they really are and kind of step forward into that. Do you have any tips or anything that can help our audience with that?
It's funny because I always think about, I used to have this kind of whatever, like you wouldn't put a picture up online unless it was like gorgeous or I don't know, whatever, it looks perfect.
Ollie filter on Lightrooms.
Oh no, yeah. I mean, like I'm all about like, I don't mind making a picture look Instagrammable, but like when you're changing your face or when you're only coming on your stories with a filter, I'm like, that's actually, I think that just screams like, I don't know, like what's the word, like self-esteem issues, but
security.
But I think like insecurities. But I think as I got older and like I'd be on Tinder or whatever, and I'm like, I'm like, oh my God, don't go look at my Instagram, because I've always just been myself on Instagram. And then I was like, actually, do you know what? I'm really like, here's my Instagram, see what I'm really like, and then if you want to actually just message me, then do. I'm really like, just save us both the hassle. There's no point, like even like showing, like I remember put my cellulite up on Instagram and people like, you're so brave, you're so I'm like, it's actually kind of being a bit selfish of me. Like I'm like, it just saves me at a time. It'll cut out the people who don't want to be there. Like if some guy is interested and then is going to not like me because he saw my cellulite, I'm like, well, that will save me a bit of time actually going on a date with him. So I just think being myself, as I said, is just like so much easier, saves you time, saves you any kind of worry. Like if I am sometimes worried about doing something wrong, especially around this pandemic, like if I was seen in a group when you're not supposed to be, there is that fear of doing something wrong. So I'm like, I'm so glad that everything else, that I've nothing else to hide, that I'm not actually trying to like keep up a certain persona or a certain image. It's like, this is me now. And I think it helped. I did a video on confidence and it went viral, well, for me. And it was just like, it's so much easier to be yourself. Like it's almost selfish. It's like, I'm doing myself a favor. I don't have to pretend to be anything. And it's just easier. I don't know what I'm chatting about now. But you know what I mean?
No, I do. But the thing is that I love about this whole journey, it really is. I think it's so cliche and easy for us to say, like, just be aware of who you are, line up your life to be like as you want to be and who you are, and kind of just follow suit with it and just let go of absolutely everything that isn't in line with it. And that will.
I'm glad you're able to summarize it like that, because sometimes I do a podcast like this and I'm like, I don't actually have any practical advice, but you basically just listened to everything I said and made it into practical advice.
So yeah, I'm your conscious loop back. Quote him.
I know, because I haven't done sometimes sharing on these podcasts, like I haven't done the courses, done the seminars. I haven't, have all the different sales techniques. I've just been doing me. And it's like, okay, if I can try and find some lessons out of it that I can share, some practical lessons, and like that will work.
I'm glad I can reflect it back to you. It's good. But look, if we start summing this up, I want to kind of get through you. I think the main topic of this conversation is like, and I totally agree, is like fulfillment and happiness will come when you just start being yourself and following suit in that. But I'd love to know from you a couple of questions that we always ask. If I could give you a device and you could write a message to all the people that you might feel that are struggling out there, and you could give something that's either practical or something that they can go and do that will help them move forwards tomorrow or get out of a sticking position, what's that one piece of advice you'd give?
You're going to die, and it doesn't matter what people think. Like, just do you.
Dude, I
mean, it was really looking for more practical advice. Step one.
Yeah.
But that's me. It's like, life is short. the whole thing is like a speck in the grand scheme of things. Like it doesn't matter like what you're wearing, what car you're driving, where you live, like, as long as you're happy.
I love that advice, which is you're gonna die. It's a little bit depressing, but I think we have this. No one speaks about it. Like tomorrow, this could end. So why are you not doing the things that you love and are excited about now? Like,
and like, to be honest, if I died tomorrow, I'd be like, oh, I went out living my best life, so it's grand. And I just hate to think that people will die with regrets.
Yeah, that was in the Stoic days. I don't, great book considering you're reading all the Stoicism. There's a great book called How to Think Like a Roman Emperor, and it's Marcus Aurelius's meditations, but they put stories to them of how he got it. And like the biggest thing for him was like every day is a blessing. It's like you will die, you don't know when, but you've got to make sure that you're effective in those things and just narrow everything into. And it was just so on par with what you just said. It's short. People might cringe at the fact like, you're going to die. But the fact
is, it was actually Gary Vee. He did a video. Someone ran up to him in the car window and said, "Say something motivational." And he was like, "You're going to die." And she was like, "Huh?" And he's like, "You're going to die. Do something about it." And she was like, "Yeah, that's good." And I was like, "Yeah, I like that." And Memento, and as a Stoic, like, or Ryan Holiday, Memento Mori. He sent me a coin that says that.
Yeah.
I have it. And I was like, yeah,
he's on our hit list. We're chasing him down for the show.
He wrote to me to send me his new book, and I was like, oh my God, fangirling.
Yeah, I love you.
It's like, yeah, cool. Yeah, hit me up. Yeah.
Are you on Tinder? Look, Siobhan, it's been awesome to have you on. I'd love to know from you as well, like, what does it mean to you to be able to lead a nourished life?
I think it's just being my higher self as much as possible, but also just enjoying when I'm my lower self and go with the flow.
Dude, I absolutely,
I really should have thought about that a bit more, but
no, it's short and sweet. They're usually the best ones. But look, Siobhan, it's been awesome to have you on. I total acknowledgements as well. It's like, I love, like, your realness is inspiring, and like to actually put yourself out there on the chopping block of social media as you do, knowing that some people do get triggered and are easily offended. I think it's incredible that you're leading the path, especially for, I worried at the point for like young females, especially with media and males as well, but like people are not living their lives. And I think for someone like yourself, you're really empowering people and you're showing them that they can do it with what you're doing. So I think it's absolutely incredible. So
thank you so much.
Yeah,
to be on.
Yeah, it's great to have you on. But where can everyone find you? Where can people find out more?
Hopefully in Bali. No, jokes. My username on Instagram is Shiv SIOBH.O'Hagan, and ohfitness.ie is my website. Which is just like I can do some coaching, I do personal training, I do an online personal training course, and that's it. And like sign up to my daily emails where I just talk shit every day.
Gotta love the Irish. Siobhan, look, it's been great having you on. Thank you.
Thank you so much.